Hello everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I'm so excited that I'm finally filming this video, and I do apologize for the huge delay in getting this up because this is one of my top 10s from 2024. And things have been really pushed back. Things have been kind of crazy for me. So I do apologize for getting this up so late, but I still want to go over my top 10 historical romances from 2024. I do want to be highlighting historical romance on my channel, and I think this is a great opportunity to give those books some more love because I think a lot of people don't have a lot of historical romances, or it's hard to make your top 10 or top 15 of the year. I think only a couple of these books were in my top 15. So I want to go over a list of all the favorites that I read from 2024 and get that out to you because historical romance, I love it. I don't want to see it going away. We need to keep these historical romance authors putting out these books and us showing the love for historical romance. So without further ado, and this has been a long delay, let's go ahead and get started on my top 10 historical romances for 2024. Okay guys, so let's get started on this list. I am going to be ranking them. They're going to be going from 10 to 1, obviously 1 being my top book of the year. And if you watch my top 15 books, you probably will guess what that book is, and I've talked about it a lot. But I'm really excited to go over some other historical romances that I really enjoyed. I believe most of the top 5 at least, or the top 6, are all 6-star reads for me. And then the other ones are 5 stars, obviously. So to start off this list with number 10 and 9, they're both going to be Outlander books. I was participating and doing the read-along for the Outlander read-along that Jen from the Book Refuge has been putting on this in 2024. We're still going in 2025 because it is a long series with very thick books, and I appreciate her letting us have extended times, a couple months to read each book. So it was kind of hard to pick out which ones I wanted to do, and I know some people call this historical fiction, but Jamie and Claire is one of the best romances and best couples of all time. So I count this as historical romance. So whatever, don't come at me, but this is historical romance to me. It is very focused on historical fiction, but the romance is why we are here. So anyways, the number 10 book that I'm going to bring up is, A Breath of Snow and Ashes. And I apologize if my ring light is hitting this because this is a shiny cover. But this is the 6th book in the Outlander series. And honestly, I'm so glad I did the read along because I really struggled with Fiery Cross. It took me forever to get through. I was pretty bored. And I have heard a lot of people kind of gave up after that book. So I'm glad I was doing the read along because this ended up being one of my favorites in the series. Obviously, I can't go into everything in these books because this is the 6th book in the Outlander series. If I don't want to spoil anything if you do want to read these. But I will mention some highlights for this to me. And that is, we are in America, Jamie and Claire. If you don't know anything about Outlander, Claire can time travel. She went back through stones and went back to Scotland, and she went back to basically like a fated mate, her soulmate, Jamie Fraser, who is the top book boyfriend of all time. And so this series is a long, ongoing series. It covers years and years, a lifetime of this couple. And they've been through so many ups and downs, separations, all that kind of stuff. But in this, they're actually, been in America, and they have the Fraser's Ridge that they live at in America. This is during a time of war. Let me see which year it is. It's the year 1772. So it's around the American Revolution. So we have another war approaching, that's kind of dangerous. And we also know that we still have a date approaching of when there was supposed to be a bad fire that killed them. And that was the reason that their daughter had gone back in time to make sure that they would be okay. So again, this is very random. I'm not able to go too deep into this, but the reason I love this book was it was so emotional. I cried a couple times. Claire goes through some really tough shit in this book. There is SA. There's, kidnapping, beating. It's very traumatic. And to kind of see how you cope with that after the fact and what she has to go through and how her and Jamie come together in times of like dark and hard times is just really beautiful. This has, these later books are really opening up to multiple POVs now. So we have more of young Ian, who is like my favorite. I really started to fall in love with Bree and Roger, who are, Bree is Jamie and Claire's daughter. And so I just really, really loved this book. It was very emotional. Again, this is kind of hard to go over these ones. That's why I'm going to keep these brief, but I did want to highlight these because they were some of my favorite books of the year. So this one was very good. And so I would say if you didn't make it after Fiery Cross, pick up this book because it has so much more going on it. The plot is, there's a lot of plot. The Fiery Cross had like nothing going on. It felt very stale and like boring. And this one had a ton of shit going on. So much in their romance. So much with all the different characters. And so I just absolutely loved it. And so then the other one that I'm going to bring up is Drums of Autumn. And I think this is the fourth book, if I'm correct. I'm not sure. But this one, that's why I was kind of having a hard time figuring out where to place them. But I love this one so much. It is kind of the journey, too, of Bree going back in time to try and save her parents because she finds out, she found a clipping that there was going to be a fire that would kill them. And that's the kind of the date that's approaching in that book. So she ends up going back in time. She travels through the stones, and so does Roger, who's basically fallen in love with her in the current timeline. And so they both go through such a crazy journey to get back to her, to find her parents and to be with them. And Bree's journey is very devastating. She goes through hell. Again, I hate to say it again, but there is SA in this. And it's, we have a villain, Stephen Bonnet, that's introduced. But the thing that made this book so amazing to me was Bree and Jamie coming together, because Jamie never thought that he would be able to see his daughter, because at Culloden, he basically knew that they were going to fail and they were going to die, and Claire was pregnant, and so he sent her back through the stones with his daughter while she was pregnant so that she could survive, she would be okay. And so he had to live so many years without Bree and Claire. And so he never thought he would get to see Bree. Now, Bree can be kind of bratty because she does have some daddy issues because she did love Frank, who was like raised her as his daughter. But just seeing Jamie be able to have that is just so moving to me. I love Jamie Fraser, top book boyfriend. So again, this one was just... it was such a crazy journey. There's so much going on in this one. And I love that they're like in America during the American Revolution. I just think that time in history is very fascinating. So again, freaking love this book. Highly recommend. If you haven't read Outlander, try and pick it up. I know it's daunting because like they are like thick books. Like this one I think is like 900 and something, but it's pretty small print. So anyways, those were my two Outlander books that I just wanted to mention in this top 10 because they were fantastic. They were both 5 stars. I really loved them. Okay, so the next book that I have is The Highlander by Kerrigan Byrne. I still need to buy this series because honestly, each book in this series is amazing. This is the 3rd book in the Victorian Rebel series. Now, Kerrigan Byrne does write darker historical romance, and I just really love that because she kind of takes things to a darker place where I love dark romance. Now, again, these are historical romance, so it's not super dark, but it does usually start out with some dark stuff at the beginning. And in this romance, this starts out with Mina, and she is actually been suffering for years with an abusive husband. In the beginning of this, she's actually been like put in an asylum, and they're like gonna treat her. And she's really put in a horrible situation. She does not belong there, but her husband put her there. And so the heroes from the previous 2 books actually break in and rescue her. And so they get her out, but she needs to kind of go on the run away from her husband because he's very abusive and could really hurt her. So she goes on the run. She goes to Scotland and she becomes the governess. Sorry. Is missing the word. The governess for Highlander. This is actually Liam Mackenzie, and he's a Scotland laird. He is also known as the Demon Highlander. So he's a pretty damaged hero. He was a colonel in the army, and he had a pretty abusive psycho father. So this is my typical scarred, damaged, broody hero that I just love. And he's Scottish. I love a Scottish hero. And I just really loved this. Mina really bonded with his kids and then also helped bridge the gap between him and his kids. There's kind of some mystery going on. Obviously, she is hiding who she really is and that, you know, somebody could be after her and all of that. But this broody hero just falls really hard for her. And it was just super sweet. I loved it. I'm not going too deep into it because honestly, I think I read this the beginning of the year. So it's not all in here. But it was one of my favorites of the year. I love Kerrigan Byrne's writing. I think if you can get past the first intro chapters, if it's a little dark, just get past that because the romance part of this is just super sweet. And I loved it. Okay, so the next one that I have is The Finest Print by Erin Langston. This is number 7 on the list. And Erin Langston is my new favorite historical romance author. I think she's doing stuff with historical that like is exactly what it needs, what I've been missing with some of the newer historicals. And she just is a fantastic author. She's just started writing really, so she only has a few books out. I just bought a couple of her novellas because I want to support her, because I want to make sure she keeps writing because I freaking love her books. So The Finest Print is Ethan Fletcher and Belle Sinclair's romance. So Belle Sinclair is actually the daughter of Gavin, and he was a hero from a previous book. He actually is the brother of the heroine from Forever Your Rogue, and he has like a novella romance that I have that I just loved that too. But this is his grown daughter, and she actually wants to be an author. She's trying to write her own book, but she's not having a lot of success getting it published because she's a woman in this time. And then we have Ethan Fletcher, and he is actually an American. He is like a self-made man. He worked in like the publishing, like newspaper, all that kind of stuff, worked his way up. And he actually, I think it was, I can't remember if it was his uncle or who it was, but somebody passed away and they left the print shop to him. So he inherited this print shop in London. And so he moves there, picks up everything, moves there for this amazing opportunity, only to find that the print shop is actually in a lot of debt. And now he's taken on those debts since he inherited it. And so he only has a limited time to pay these debts off. And he really doesn't think he can do it within that amount of time. And like back then, like news and stuff was like they had to pay like taxes on that. And like people had to pay more to be able to get those papers. And so he's trying to come up with an idea of what he can do to try and build up that money to pay off his debts. And he runs into Belle and kind of sees her stories and what she's doing. And so he kind of gives her an opportunity. He comes to her and says, hey, why don't we serialize these stories? We'll make them into penny dreadfuls and we'll sell those, and we can print out a bunch of those and sell them at a cheaper cost, and more people will be able to buy those because the penny dreadfuls did really well. Now at this time, they weren't called penny dreadfuls yet, but that's what I'm calling it. So they basically kind of have this coworker forced proximity. Every day they're working together. They're pining after each other. The longing, and that's what Erin Langston does so well, is you just feel that like it wasn't super angsty, but you just feel like their connection, their like it was just adorable. And they work together. And, you know, he thinks like he's not good enough to be able to be with her because she does come from a family of prestige. And so he's just doesn't think it would work. But just the everyday working together, him supporting her, like the way they work together, it was just so adorable. And I freaking love this book. You could definitely read this as a standalone. You don't have to read the other books. And this is her most recent release, and I just freaking loved it. It's a fantastic one. Okay, so the next one that I have, and these are like the start of my 6-star books, is When the Earl Met His Match by Stacy Reid. Stacy Reid is one of my favorite historical romance authors. I just love what she does. And I think if you're newer to historical romance, I think she's a great place to start because her books are very easy to read. You know, sometimes they're not as long. Like this one's not super long, you know, like, so it's a really fun, easy read. And this one, I think it was the 4th and final book in a series. It was the Wedded by Scandal series, and this was my favorite one in that series. And this is about Hugh and Lady Phoebe. And Hugh is the future Earl of Albany, and he is a mute hero. And he actually puts an advert up to get a wife. And Phoebe sees this and the things that he's demanding, and she just thinks it's so ridiculous. So they actually start like writing each other letters and building up this correspondence. And so they kind of like, it started off her giving him a hard time for his advertisement, and then they became kind of like friendly, and they would write back and forth. Unfortunately, she actually gets herself in a bad situation. She is compromised. She fell in love and she got pregnant. But the father was able to get paid off by her parents, and they are like, she overhears her mother like talking about like giving her baby up. I think they were called like some type of farm, whatever thing, which was just horrible. They would take these babies away, and she does not want to lose her baby. So she decides that she's going to pick up, sneak out, and go to this Earl and basically tell him she is going to accept his wedding, his proposal through the advertisement. And so she kind of shows up randomly, and he doesn't really know what to do with this, but he does end up going with it because he needs a wife, and, you know, they had a pretty good connection through, you know, writing letters and everything. And he sees that she's in this bad situation. And what I loved about this was, first, they had a kind of a language barrier. He would write her like little letters. She tried to learn like some sign language. And so they had some really sweet moments together. And what kills me, and this will always get me in any romance, is a man that takes on another man's baby and raises them, accepts them, fully loves that baby like it's his own. And that definitely happens here. I just really loved it. It was very swoon-worthy. I love their bromance, and I love a man that, you know, accepts that baby as his own, and he's going to fight hard for that baby. So that just always gets me. So I definitely recommend this. It was such a sweet, sweet one. Okay, so number 5 on my list is Temptation of Highlander by Elisa Braden. And this, I think, might have been the 3rd book in the series, or the 2nd. I'm sorry, I can't remember. I think it's the 2nd book in the series. But this is the Midnight. Oh, yeah, it is book 3. So it's Midnight in Scotland, book 3. And this is between Clarissa Meadows and Campbell McPherson. And this one kind of started out darker. It was kind of shocking. Like the first 2 I really loved, but this one just like blew me away. I still need to read the most recent book that came out in this series. But Clarissa actually has a stalker, and it's not a cute like stalker. He's pretty dangerous. He's killed like their animals. He's left things for her. So she's very fearful. And so one of her best friends is actually married, and she's in Scotland. And so she goes out there to kind of go on the run a little bit away from this stalker to get away. But unfortunately, the stalker follows her there. And so she ends up getting to stay with Campbell. And Campbell is the brother of her friend's husband. And so he is a very like huge, broody kind of dark hero too, which you can tell I have a type. But he like doesn't really want to, but he takes her on, and he lives in a very like small place, so there it's very forced proximity, and he's like going to be her protector and bodyguard. And it was just so adorable. It was funny. It was just I loved it. Like Clarissa is very into him. She loves his big hands, and she's pretty inappropriate. She doesn't really have a filter, so she always like says these things to him, and he's just like can't believe it. But I mean, this one was so spicy. It was so sexy. I love their connection. I just thought it was such a great time. And then it does have that suspense element because we are dealing with that stalker following her to Scotland. And so I just love this. Honestly, like I haven't read a ton of Elisa Braden, but this is like one of my favorites. I think this was my first 6-star of 2024. So I highly recommend this. And I just love this cover. I think she's like a curvy heroine too. Yeah, it says like she bursts out double entendres over breakfast, shows a peculiar interest in the size of his hands. So yeah, he's a giant Scottish sexy man, and she loves it. So definitely recommend this. I would, even if you haven't read the other ones in the series, I would read this one. It's so good. Okay, so now on to number 4, and I have another Stacy Reid, you guys. So I have The Wolf and the Wildflower, and this is a standalone. So this isn't even part of a series, I don't think it was. And we actually read this for our buddy read, and I gave this one 6 stars. I freaking loved it. I love Stacy Reid, like I've said before, and this one was such a unique setup that like I just had to put it on my list. I loved it. It's a very interesting setup here because we have James, and he's the Duke of Wolverton, but actually he had been missing in the wilderness, I think for 10 years. Yes. So he was lost in the wilderness for 10 years. He's been found, and now he, needs to become the Duke. But he's pretty wild, he was living out in the wilds. So like, and he went through a lot to survive out there. So his mother's like needs help with him to kind of take on being a duke, being a part of society, learning the roles that he needs to follow. And so they actually hire an alienist, which is kind of like a therapist back then. And that is actually Jules' father. And she actually went to university, but she went to university because she's been posing as a man her whole life. Her father has no idea, but her mother had multiple like scary pregnancies, dangerous pregnancies. And so when she had her, she told the father it was a boy. And so that's kind of crazy. You have to suspend your the disbelief in this. But yeah, so she was eventually going to tell him, but she just wanted the break so that she wasn't forced to keep trying to have another heir. And so she lied to him. And then of course she makes her daughter lie and live as a man. So the mother's pretty effed up in this. I gotta say, I was infuriated with her for this book. But Jules has been able to live a more free life because she's been living as a man. She went to university. She got a degree. She's working with her father. She gets to go to like gambling and drinking out. And so it's like she gets to live such a more free life, but she's not who she really is. So she's going with her father to kind of help the Duke become, more civilized. And he instantly smells her because he's more primal. And he instantly goes up and like smells her and knows she's a woman. And he does like decide he only wants to work with her, and like he'll keep her secret. So they spend a lot of one-on-one time together, and she's trying to help him. He'll like not want to sleep in the house and like run off into the woods and sleep out there. And she would go spend time with him out there. It was just crazy. There is one scene that like I loved where they both go out like to like gambling den, I think, and then they went to a brothel, and they get it on in a pretty sexy way at this brothel too, that I just thought was so crazy. So I really love this. I thought it was a really unique setup and very interesting story of a woman that had to like live as a man. It wasn't like she wanted to. But then also when she falls in love, now she would have to come out as a woman to be able to be his Duchess, and she would lose all her freedom, basically. So that's kind of the struggle in this too. But I loved the hero. I love that he was willing to like say F off to society to do what he wanted just to be with her. So I really, really love this one. Fantastic read. Okay, so this one was actually 12 Rec from 12 Friends, and I never read this author before. This is number 3, and this one really surprised me because I probably would have never picked this up just because I don't really go for the animated covers, and that's Ne'er Duke Well by Alexandra Vasti. And this one just like stole my heart. Honestly, it was so sweet and feel good and romantic, and I just really adored it. And in this, we have, Peter Kent, and he is actually the new Duke of Stanhope. He was living in America, but like the father or whatever died, and he didn't have full like heir, like his siblings weren't full heirs or whatever. It was like the second and third. And so he's going to be the new Duke. And he wants to get custody of his half siblings. So he has moved to London. He's moved to the UK, and he is trying to get, but he has to go through this whole court proceeding to try and get custody. But he has to go, and this kind of judge or whatever it was called back then, he actually is a pretty tough character, and he has kind of had some scandals. He doesn't do things the way they do things over there, so there's a lot of stories about him. Peter Kent, I'm saying, the Duke. And so he kind of needs help, and he goes to our heroine, which was, I'm trying to remember her name. Did I even put her name here? Oh, Selena, sorry. Selena. And she actually offers to help him. And she says, I heard about this judge. He had this whirlwind romance where they ran off to Scotland to get married real quickly. And so like, how about you get married and like a whirlwind romance? It'll make him more like looking into you, and then it'll help your respectability if you're with, have a good marriage. So she's trying to set him up on dates, and these dates aren't going that great. Honestly, her and him, they are connecting on a deeper level. She's really into him. Obviously, you're wondering, why wouldn't she just marry him? She doesn't feel like she'd be a good choice because she actually has a secret, like she runs an erotic library for women. And if it came out, which it's close to coming out, who owns it and is running it, it would ruin his chances to get his kid, the half siblings. So she doesn't want to ruin his chances, but of course they're falling in love with each other, and then they may get caught in a compromising position so that they need to get married. And I just really love this because they communicated so well. They worked as a team. Like, she didn't hide her like big secret from him really that long, and he was really supportive of it. And then when you think it's like a thing where she's going to run off to do what's best for him and the kids, like they talk things out, and it's just a beautiful thing. I love seeing communication in a book. It's beautiful. There's no third act breakup. There's some really amazing, like emotional times too, because one of his brothers in the US like died from a sickness. And so some of the kids get sick in this, and he's very freaked out. There's just emotional stuff in this too. So this book was just so sweet and romantic, and it was surprisingly spicy too. So I highly recommend this. It was a great read. Okay, so number 2, I was going to say, I don't know if I should add this to the list, but I love it so much. It's technically a reread, but I haven't read it for like forever, since before I did BookTube, before like I was rating books. So I decided I'm still adding it to this list because I definitely upped my feelings on it. And this is The Earl Takes All by Lorraine Heath. I love this book so much. This was so angsty, so swoon worthy. I love the hero in this book. I love the setup is so unique. It's one of my favorite historical romances by Lorraine Heath. It is so good. I think it's the second book in the series, but I say you can definitely read this as a standalone because it's the best one in that series. But in this, we have Edward and Julia, and Edward is actually the twin brother of her husband. She married his twin, and Edward has actually been in love with her for years, but he like acts like an asshole to her to push her away because he feels really guilty for those feelings. And they kind of go on these safaris, like adventures, him and his twin, and his twin gets killed. I think it was from like a gorilla attack, if I'm remembering correctly. I can't even remember, but his twin dies over there. But she is actually pregnant. And she's had some dangerous pregnancies where she's lost the babies before. And so his twin basically wants him to go back home, pretend to be him, till she has the baby so that she won't be at risk of losing the baby. And so Edward does not want to do this because he's in love with her, but he has to go back and live as his brother and be there for her. And she's just noticing so many differences between him, but she's kind of falling in love with the new him. This is just so angsty because, you know, he's holding this secret and he wants to be with her, but you can't really marry your brother's wife at this time. So there's a whole law against that. So it was like, once truths are revealed, like, how are they going to be together? I just love this. Edward was so swoon-worthy. The way he loved her, like, he just worshipped her. And so I love this. It's one of my favorite Lorraine Heaths. I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. Okay, so now for my number 1. And if you've watched my channel, you will not be shocked to see this on here. And that is Forever Your Rogue by Erin Langston. So she's got a couple in my top 10. So, you know, I highly recommend, if you have not read Erin Langston, pick up this book. It was my first book by her. It blew me away. It's emotional. It's swoon-worthy. It's so romantic. So romantic. I love everything about this book. It just put me through all my feels. I didn't want it to end. It's everything I want in a historical romance. This delivers everything that I want. Okay, so this is between Nate, I think it's Nate, Nathaniel Travers. So Nate Travers and Cora. And Nate is kind of what we see here, a rogue. He's kind of not living a very responsible life. His older brother actually had to take care of him at a pretty younger age because he had to take him on. And so he's kind of like a father figure to him, and he really wants him to get his act together. He's got some debts and he's partying and just a rogue, you know. And we have Cora, and she actually was married. She's, her husband had died recently. They didn't love each other. It wasn't a love match, but they had, you know, a couple kids. And now, because of that time, she doesn't have the rights for like custody and to make decisions for her kids. It's going to go to his sibling, and she does not want them in charge of her children. She wants to be the one that's in control, and she doesn't want them taking those rights away from her, which is just crazy that even happened back then. And so she comes up with an idea that she's going to do a fake engagement because the aunt and uncle are actually going to come stay with her and her kids for the summer. And she figures if she has an engagement kind of going on, that means she's going to have a new husband, that, you know, they would be able to be a better choice for raising these kids. And aunt and uncle wouldn't even be involved in it. So she decides to pick Nate because they kind of knew each other. They're friendly. And she knows he's got some debts and stuff that she's like going to take care of if he does this with her. So he agrees because he's in a bad situation, and he goes and basically lives out in this country house with her, for the summer, and the aunt and uncle there as well. And, you know, it just is so amazing because this guy, this rogue, you know, he basically starts falling for her and her kids. And there are just so many swoon-worthy moments. And the longing in this book, these people are mutually pining after each other. They have amazing chemistry. They have great banter, and they are longing after each other. Like the slight touches, nothing kills me more than like the slight hand touch or whatever. Like, it's just so, it brings me back to like, you know, Pride and Prejudice with like the hand. Oh, so there's so many great scenes in this, so many swoon-worthy things. But what I love so much was watching Nate go from like a rogue to wanting to be a father figure, wanting to help these kids thrive and grow and falling in love with this woman and wanting to be there for her. You know, he really grows up and his character arc is so amazing. And just the romance in this, it's so romantic. There's like a bunch of letters in here that I just loved. Some of the, like, there's a piano scene, a library scene. I love a library scene, like romantic library scene. Like, there's so many swoon-worthy moments with him where he was like teaching her son to swim. He like knew the daughter was scared of dogs, so he goes to her rescue at like this one event. I mean, it was just so swoon-worthy. And then when they finally get together, you're like longing for that too. Like, you're just waiting for it. And it's just the sexiest scene, like out in the rain, running to like this other cabin, and they finally have sex, and it's amazing. So this is romantic, swoon-worthy, spicy, emotional. It just gave me everything. And I highly recommend this. If you have not given this a shot yet, please read this book. It is so good. It's my favorite of the year, and it's probably going to be a favorite for a really long time. So Erin Langston is a new author to watch, and I'm just so excited about her. So I really want you to go out there and support her, get her books, so that she keeps giving us romances like these, because they're just so good. Okay, so those were my top 10 historical romances from 2024. Thank you so much for watching this. Sorry for putting this up so late, but I did still want to get this out to you because I think historical romances are so important, and I don't want us to lose them because we're all focused on dark romance, mafia, contemporary. We're losing our love for historical. So please support your historical romance authors, and we just got to show them the love. All right. Thank you so much for watching this, and I will see you guys on the next one.